Well, hello and thank you. Thank you for joining us for another episode of Community Storytelling. Here's a story you may know parts of, or at least you know the gentleman, and I think I probably talked about him years ago when I was on the radio, but here he is sitting next to me, Eric Drew. Hi, Eric.
Hi, Lisa.
So I don't know, do I say Eric Drew Foundation, WeHeal.org?
Okay, good question. So the Eric Drew Foundation was founded in my name, obviously, to save my life and to advocate for patients all over the world, especially here in the Bay Area. And we are now in the process of changing that. You know, unfortunately, I'm not an international celebrity, and this is a global project. So we need a name that's marketable, that people understand, and is reflective of the mission, and that is healing together. So we heal, together we heal.
And we will get to that. But I got to start with you. I mean, what a story.
Thank you.
And you look fabulous. Are you in fabulous health?
I am in fabulous health. I mean, I'm healthy as an ox. I do have a lot of medical issues from the damage from a lot of treatments that I probably should have never had.
So let's start. Let's start from day one. Let's start from December of 2002, 15 years ago.
Yes, 15 years ago. Well, I had just moved back to the U.S. from working as an international software executive. I lived in London and worked in Munich and all over Europe and Asia. And I had a consulting business. I was in the best shape of my life, 34 years old. Actually, I had just turned 35. And you know, I had a fiance, and you know, I was just about to buy a house in downtown Los Gatos, mortgage approved, everything. I mean, just everything going well. Prime of my life, right?
Yes.
And I go in to make the monthly donation that I've been doing for 8 years at the Red Cross, donating platelets for kids with leukemia. Talk about irony. And they noticed something wrong with my blood. And they said, you know, you look a little bit pale, actually. Are you feeling okay? And I go, well, you know, I've been feeling kind of tired, and I had a flu a week ago, which I normally never get, but otherwise I can't put my finger on anything. And they said, well, you know, we'll reschedule you for next week. Why don't you go see your doctor, and, you know, you're borderline anemic. And that was very scary for me because, you know, growing up, you know, playing on the Los Gatos football team, quarterback on the football team, and wasn't star quarterback or anything, but quarterback on the football team, and played soccer in college and surf and ski. I was always athletic and active and in great health. So this was very alarming to me. But long story short, was seeing a progression of doctors over a few days. Within a week, I was diagnosed at 4 o'clock on a Tuesday afternoon. The doctor walked in with tears running down his face, and he just put his hand on my knee and choked himself up and said, "You're in for the fight of your life. You have acute lymphoblastic leukemia.
Wow.
It is stage 4+. Your bone marrow sample was 100% cancer.
Oh my.
Your body is not producing blood anymore, which is why you're more fatigued by the hour. And literally, I need you to go home right now, get your affairs in order, and 8 a.m. tomorrow morning, you are scheduled to check into Stanford Medical Center for emergency ablative chemotherapy." Just like that. So I had 12-hour notice to wrap up my whole life, quit my job, get my affairs in order, and check into a hospital with the reality that it was very likely I'd never get out.
Well, because I was told you were told you have a day or two.
Well, okay, so there's a lot of people, and a lot of people, you know, when the word goes around the room, and then what's it like? Yeah, what's it like when it gets to the end again? So what the doctor said was, and I immediately said, well, wait a minute, you know, I want to get a second opinion, and you know, who else can I tell? You know, wait a second here, you know, nothing can. He says, look, if you do not check into Stanford Medical Center tomorrow morning at 8 a.m., you will die in the next 3 or 4 days. Your body is very quickly losing its ability to sustain itself. You have no immune system. You could catch an infection today, and it could be lethal. So basically, it's like you're dying of AIDS, hemophilia, and anemia all at the same time.
So you're at Stanford, and test after test, test after test, test after test.
Yeah, well, now I'm at Stanford. They already know what I have. So they enter me, and they said, basically, for all people in your situation, the first thing we got to do is you're dying quickly. We have to emergency, you know, get this under control and get you into at least a temporary remission to a certain level. In other words, we got to knock it out of your peripheral blood and then pump you full of donated blood so that your body can survive. So that was the first step. And the first thing I said, well, wait a minute, you know, is this going to mean I can't have a family in the future? Or, you know, so I actually postponed the chemo to potentially bank for my posterity. So I risked my life for my future children, which I haven't ever used yet, but at this point, who knows?
Nice
but anyway, it was
maybe TMI.
Interesting twist. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it was. I mean, the first few days was. I mean, it was absolute hell. It was like being flushed down a black hole. I mean, the pain. I mean, immediately I went from being fatigued without a lot of other issues to being in, where every joint in my body froze up, and that's a leukemic paralysis. And,
So I know you became your own advocate because nothing was working for you.
well, I assumed the whole 9 months of treatment, was I assumed to the purpose of trying to cure me. In retrospect, I realize now that those treatments never had any chance of curing me. That I really wasn't being involved in the decision-making process moving forward. I was not, educated enough to know, hey, that drug you're giving me, there's a better one over here. I want that one. I mean, all these just, bumps and
Right.
potholes to watch out for. I almost died a dozen times that first 6 months because of mistakes. Because of mistakes that were made in double dosing on a medication one time, forgetting to taper me off another medication, sending me into renal failure. All of a sudden I was home, went blind, and my friends had to carry me. All these things, and I realized very quickly that if I did not become an expert in my disease and advocate for myself, my chances of making it through this were nil.
So I assume you were in pretty good financial shape to be able to do this.
Personally, well, one, the community started the foundation, to assist me in getting up to hospitals around the country, to pay for the travel, to go see doctors in different places, that sort of thing. And then, of course, growing up in Los Gatos, I grew up in this amazing community called Las Cumbres. It's out of the city limits, but it's still a Los Gatos address, actually in Santa Cruz County. But this community called Las Cumbres was all Silicon Valley executives. And some of the people that I grew up with my parents being best friends, and they're like all my aunts and uncles, were the people that built Google, and the people that built, were in charge of the Macintosh and Lisa projects at Apple and everything. So I always knew that if I had to, the resources would be there.
So the next thing you know, Los Gatos is Save Eric.
Yes.
Save Eric is all over Los
Save
Gatos.
our Eric. It was really amazing.
And I know you had a little stand out there on Main Street, and you were signing up people for
the National Maradona Program. I couldn't believe it that when I was looking at this, and I would go in there and I'd be sitting in a room full of patients in the waiting room and this and that, and I'm chatty, I'm trying to figure out what they're doing, what's going on with them, learn from them. And so many of them were essentially being sent to hospice and dying simply because we didn't have very many people signed up into the National Maradona Program at that time. And if people just simply got tested and added to the database, they could, potentially spend a few hours one day and donate bone marrow and save somebody's life, And I think that if people just knew this, they would come in droves to sign up. And so I thought, this is ridiculous. We got to change this. We need to get, everybody in the country should be signed up. I mean, immediately. Unfortunately, at that point, it costed $100 per person to sign somebody up to that program.
Oh, really? Okay.
So I joined teams with Rotary International, the Red Cross, with Leukemia Lymphoma Society, with who else?
Guessing the Kiwanis are in there.
A lot of,
Yes.
Kiwanis. I mean, every organization in
Yes.
this town got involved, including national organizations,
Yes.
et cetera. People came out of the woodwork. I think there must have been at least a couple hundred volunteers, including the people that helped start the foundation, put on the first fundraisers, organize events at, Courtside Los Gatos Hotel. I mean, there were even individual stores in town were having little silent auctions and stuff and putting it. It was an amazing. We raised almost $250,000 in 6 weeks.
That's one of the many things so wonderful about Los Gatos.
But it was like this. I literally
They were
spent
your family.
Spent the last $5,000 that the foundation had on a mailer, or so maybe it was more than that, and to send everybody in the whole Los
Right.
Gatos, Montessorino, Saratoga zip codes and surrounding community, Los Altos maybe, and said, hey, and I wrote a letter personally and said, dear neighbor, this is who I am. I'm dying. I need your help. This foundation has been started. It's not just about me. We're helping a lot of other patients by, as a matter of fact, obviously that bone marrow drive and everything that we put together,
Yes.
didn't directly, save my life, but it helped a
Yes.
lot of other people.
So what did ultimately save your life?
Well, there was you're missing about a year in between. So after Stanford sent me to
worried we're
hospice,
gonna run out of time. That's why.
Quickly after Stanford sent me to hospice, I spent I spent 9 months. I demanded a transfer. I said, I'm not doing your hospice program. I demand a transfer to the Fred Hutch Cancer Research Center in Seattle, where it turns out that a sister, a half-sister, who I'd only met 2 years before, worked in the bone marrow transplant department. So I went to Seattle. I went through two failed bone marrow transplants up there and a whole nother chemo protocol over 9 months up there. And obviously those failed too. That's when I decided I needed to search internationally. And when I did that, when I turned my search internationally, within a week, I found out what treatment I should have been having from the beginning.
And you got?
And I figured out which hospitals in the U.S. were going to be announcing the newest trials with doing this. It was a very simple concept. Bone marrow is simply a source of stem cells. Stem cells are not controversial, regardless of everything you hear in the news. Bone marrow is simply a source of stem cells. There are other sources like umbilical cord blood from newborn babies. They had figured out in Europe that if we use 2 or 3 babies' bloods to transplant an adult, that it works great, and that they were saving adults. Whereas in the United States, everybody adult with this situation was being told to go home and die.
So umbilical cord stem cell saved your life.
Absolutely. So we found the set of stem cells that saved my life in a corner of a basement bank, cryobank in Milan, Italy, that had been frozen for 8 years, sitting in a tub of liquid nitrogen in a dark corner of a basement. Talk about a needle in a haystack.
Yes.
And that was the key from a little baby girl. So my blood is now female from a little baby girl. It's, 13 years old now. I just turned 13 in July. And it's amazing. Half of my body, or whatever percentage of my body's blood and bone marrow, is now somebody else's.
So now, from what I understand, you are dedicating your life to helping others. And
I
you
have since my diagnosis.
WeHeal.org. So tell us about WeHeal.org.
So after advocating for patients for 14 years, it became very, very obvious to me that I was basically, life coaching for sick people in a sense, like getting them motivated, saying, hey, you got to broaden your horizons. If you want to survive this, you need to look at what treatments are going on around the world, what's going on in the U.S. You may have to travel. I traveled to 2 different cities for 6-9 months at a time to get my treatments. And that medicine is very, very specific now. And to get the very best thing for you, you got to find that niche and go for it and demand it. And it really became obvious that there's people out there that are doing amazing amounts of research on their own disease and becoming, but all that information just dies with them. There's no one central place where people are coming together as a community for MS, for, in an international community, comparing different disciplines, comparing what's working, what's not, and literally making it readily available what is the best way forward for you as a patient.
So we've got WeHeal.org.
WeHeal.org, crowd healing is what we call it, very Silicon Valley term.
Yes.
It's crowdsourcing for medicine. So imagine if you were diagnosed with MS, instead of just having to bounce around to local doctors and figure out what they're offering and what's best and who's doing what, and there's conflicting information and there's conflicting agendas all over the place because everybody has their agenda because it's all for profit and everyone's got a business to run. And you can go to a free advocate community, get real data and feedback on what the latest treatments are, what's working, what's not, what has been the experience of these other thousands of patients that have already been through this, and say the best way forward for me is now much more clear. It may not be this is the best treatment for me, but now I know what steps I need to take now to figure that out. And these are the, start narrowing my options and figuring out what's the best way for me to navigate this.
I assume you have a whole staff working on this. It's not just you, is it?
I wish.
And that little basement?
We are still, so we just launched this website last year. We are just now getting all the programs in place to run these communities and structure these communities through student internships, structured oversight committees, basically building the largest volunteer network in the world. But we need funding. I basically have, putting my life savings into getting this thing off the ground, and now it's time. We have an executive director who is, she's executive level, worked with eBay and Lockheed, and very, very smart. She's kind of the tech project manager, and we're getting a lot of people on board. Things are growing very, very fast, but I need help.
So it'll just keep getting bigger and better.
I need help. Yeah.
WeHeal.org.
WeHeal.org.
And that's how people can get in touch with you, or
Yes.
or just do some research on their own.
Absolutely, and here's how people can get involved. They can join a community. They can give feedback to other patients. They can ask us questions. We now partner with national organizations and offer free treatment and clinical trial consultations for all cancer patients. You're talking the top doctors and advocates in the world looking at their case and saying, here's the latest science, here's the latest data, these are the top treatments you should consider, here you go. It's all free and it's available on WeHeal.org.
So when you wake up in the morning, what do you think? You must think that you are the most blessed man in the world.
I am. I always say, you know what? It's funny. In some ways, I'm the luckiest man in the world, and in other ways, I'm the unluckiest man. It's
Well,
like my life is one of extremes. And
sometimes you have to be unlucky before you become lucky.
yeah, I mean, and everything has a silver lining. I've been writing, a book for 10 years, and I call it "It's All Good" because ALL was the name of my disease, and no matter what happens to you in life, there's always a silver lining.
Yeah. It's an amazing
it's all
story.
Good.
You're very inspirational. WeHeal.org is where you're going to find Eric. And you know where to find us, kcat.org. Do you have a story like Eric's or like anybody? Everybody has a fabulous story to share, and I would love to share yours. And thank you. Thank you so much for being with us at KCAT TV 15.